marketing too. And
What's up? We're here. We're at Figure It the Fuck Out. My boy Samnang.
I'm here flexing. I did my push-ups. Actually, I
Dude.
skipped push-ups. My bathroom break took a little longer than usual.
Nice. Yeah, I still need to start working out, man. I'm not doing that yet, but that's I'm hoping you'll inspire me through this, right?
Oh yeah. Anybody that hangs out with me just wants to get jacked. I don't know. I just had that little effect on people.
I mean, dude, when you see yourself, like especially like the first episode, you had your sleeves off. I'm like, God damn, dude, like don't look at my arms. Like,
Yeah,
God.
yeah. I did that on purpose, you know. It's, you're gonna go into a big room. You better know that you're the biggest dude in the room, or
Yeah,
for being
man.
a dude like 5'4" and stuff. It's like, what can you change about yourself? That's personal development. Your character, and then your physical body. You could change that. So, um, that's that's kind of like why I think we just have conversations about personal development. That's why I think this podcast is evolved into what it is, right? I think we were talking about why are we starting this podcast, or what are we talking about today, and what inspired us, or something like that. So,
Yeah, I
Danny,
think yeah, last week we just kind of like again, we're winging this for everybody that's watching it, right? We just had a conversation and then last week we kind of just really just caught up. I feel like more than anything, just recorded it. And today, talking about coaching, I think in general, just because it's been such a big part of both of our lives.
yeah,
And so, I think to start bringing it back to the old school, when it first all began for you and kind of wrapping it up as our Lake Braddock days. So,
yeah,
why don't you kick it off, Sam Nang? Like, tell me about like, coaching's such a big world, like it's your world now, right? And
yeah. It pretty much is.
so where did it, when did it all begin? Like, when was your first experience with coaches and like what was that like?
I mean, when you start playing sports, you get coached. It's like the first experience. Really, the first time I got coached and just got like shitted on was playing football at Lake Braddock, ninth grade, and like starting knowing nothing, absolutely nothing, and just getting yelled at and reamed by coaches. Back in the day, it was a lot more f bombs, and it wasn't as sensitive as it is now. It'd be
Right.
like, take my foot off your ass type of thing, right? But coaches would say that, but they also say that they love you, and like the reason why they're coaching you is because they want you to be successful. Uh, Now coaching me, I've been a coach myself. I bodybuilded, but I never really trained to coach anybody until I got into the CrossFit community. I was a CrossFit coach for like 8 years, and a powerlifting and weightlifting coach. Uh, it kind of just naturally led into there. I think that's kind of like how the path is. You just keep doing stuff that you enjoy, and then you're like, oh, I like this gym. Oh, I like this style of training and stuff. And then you continue to build on it and on it. And then naturally people want to learn from you if you're in that area and stuff. So you start asking questions, and you start it just happens. And then it just evolved. Right now I'm a life coach because I've gone through a lot of therapy and stuff. So I was like, well, why don't I just encompass everything I know into like one
Well,
thing?
I think there's like a couple interesting things of, in that story of like, and I think it's so true for all of us. Like once you accomplish something, there's that give back almost, right? Like where people naturally just come to you and they're like, how are you doing that? Like what's your opinion on this? What's your thoughts on this? So naturally, I think like as we achieve different little things in our journeys, we all end up like that mentor mentee kind of thing just
Yeah.
naturally happens. And then I think you just kind of took it to the next level because of, your success, but also there's something to be said about like the gratification you get as a coach, right? And it's something that's rare in this world where you truly want, at least for me, like when I was coaching in snowboarding, I wanted nothing more than for my athlete to win, right?
Yeah.
Like I cared about them winning and I had nothing to do with my ego. Maybe there was a small part of it that was like, hey, I coached them. But at the end of the day, it's not me doing the tricks, right? It's the athlete doing it. So there's
Yeah.
that kind of interesting relationship as a coach that you just naturally want to see these people win.
Yeah. I mean, that's everybody has that natural inclination. It's a human need to contribute, right? We just don't realize that. If you have like little brothers, little sisters, and stuff, you're gonna naturally want to help them, right? Because it feels good. And when they do succeed, it's like, yeah, let me keep doing it. Everybody has this natural inclination. It's just Guys tend to lean into coach or sports athletes and stuff. Coaching, females teachers. I talk to people, spiritual teachers, spiritual healers, therapists, counselors. They're all kind of the same thing, different. Like I talked about in the first episode, like we're all helping each other just kind of get together and making each other better. But our language might be a little bit different, but like we're all coming in the same. You know, I have an Eastern background, Western background, and you have a Western background. You want to learn more about the Eastern background. So we're all sharing this wisdom, this knowledge and stuff. That's what coaching and I think therapy has evolved into. Before it used to be just sports. In my head, I thought it was just sports. But Tony Robbins was the one that opened up my eyes to like life coaching and stuff in college. So I was inspired in college by him by reading a book. I'm big on Tony Robbins, and you know, I the reason why I have all these accomplishments is because he was inspired me in college to, oh, I'm on the right path. That's why I read books. I found out the reason why I read books is to reaffirm what my beliefs are outside of like what everybody believes and stuff. So that I guess that's kind of like my message, and my message like it's absorbed into everything I do, like my coaching, my training, and like my philosophies and stuff. And I think we need to think more. You know, I think it's a sense, it's a sixth sense that we don't really practice. So
Yeah,
uh,
man. So you know, after college or after high school, right? You're getting coached in football. You move on
yeah,
into college, and then you mentioned that you know you started reading like Tony Robbins, which you know, and this is the interesting thing about content, right? Like even the content that you and I you know post out there, right? It's like you were kind of getting coached indirectly by his content, right, through
yeah,
the book,
yeah.
which inspired you to do kind of the next thing and then learn more and so on and so forth. And then was it around that time that you started getting into like CrossFit and started like training in CrossFit, or like how did that like what would you say was like the kind of translation of like that kind of enlightenment of you know consuming Tony's content and then like where you were like, oh whoa, I'm starting to do this stuff.
Yeah, I guess in our field we call it breakthrough, right? People say
Okay.
spiritual and breakthroughs, right? When you just have like a breakthrough, if you have a version where you're just like confused, so like life coaching is like a lot of people are confused. They're in the gray area. Should I make this transition? Should I move out of my house? Should I get married? What do I do after I graduate? Right? This transition is where people kind of get stuck. But when you make a breakthrough, like because I was at college undeclared, I seek guidance of one of my fraternity brothers. He was like, read this book. And I was like, okay. I read the book. I read like one third of the book. I picked up the one concept that like it's called kanai. It's like discipline, right? Constantly and never ending improvement. It's translated from a Japanese term called kaizen. So, and that's really big part of my philosophy is kaizen or kanai. So it's just continuous discipline. So when I made that breakthrough, I read that book and literally picked my major, started weightlifting. uh, Literally, like I went to parties maybe like 3 nights a week. I think I cut it down to like one night a week. I picked up a part-time job, and then like in next year, I got like a girlfriend, right? So I was like,
Just
oh,
boom, 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 just like started
right,
figuring the fuck
because
out.
you're doing it, and then you're reaffirming the action. So that was like a small breakthrough, and then I made like breakthroughs here and there, but the biggest breakthrough was most recently last year. So that's why I'm on a very elevated it's just progressions, it's not I just been doing it for a long time. I don't like putting myself on a pedestal or anything, but it's like I just been grinding at it for a long time.
No, and I think it's important, man. I mean, that's the point of this, you know, start of this episode, right? Is just to kind of share our backgrounds and like our histories and just like, you know, for us, like I'm learning, right? None of this is scripted. We don't really talk
No,
outside of the podcast. And that's kind of the idea is, right? Like we're just documenting our actual conversations on it.
yeah,
So it's, you know, it's interesting to hear from me. So a lot of these questions are just genuinely, I'm curious, right? Like, so, and like, it's funny, man, like in my experience with coaching, right? I graduated Lake Braddock. I was not on time over summer school. Like I was always like the bad kid, right? I was always in trouble.
about that.
My first like I wasn't in like I did sports in like freshman year. I was in on lacrosse and like but I chose to skateboard instead, right? And I would skip practice and go skateboard. So like I don't really consider myself like I was into sports in high school. I
Yeah.
was into like skateboarding, love snowboarding, you know, love to party, love to socialize. Like that's when I kind of found my path in high
You were
school.
pretty
But
popular, right? I think
Well,
every
not at first, dude. At first, I wasn't popular at all. Like, I remember in 10th grade, dude, I wanted to be popular. So, like, I
yeah,
always tried to like hang around the popular kids and I'd do whatever they would say. I'll never forget this, dude. This is like one of my most humbling moments of my life, and it changed my life forever. I was hanging around the popular kids, and they were like, "Hey, Danny, go tell that junior, this is in sophomore year, go tell that junior to get out of our hallway and quit talking to our girls." I was like, oh, cool. Like popular kids tasking me to do something. Like I'm going to do it. So I walked up to that person and I was like, hey, man, fuck out of our hallway. And he just looked over at me and smiled and said, okay. And he left. And I was like, I did it. Like I'm fucking cool. That day, it was sixth period. I was in German class. I walk out of the German class, and there he is with the entire junior class. It
oh
felt
yeah.
like, and they circled me, and they're ready to like kick my ass. And dude, I had like I had a decision moment then, right? And my decision was fight this kid, get my ass kicked because let's face it, dude, I've never been a big guy. I've always been this like I was gonna get my ass kicked, like period.
Yeah,
Like anybody could have kicked my ass. I knew that. So it was like fight this dude, get my ass kicked or break down and tell the truth. And so I did. And this is like, it's
oh,
embarrassing, but it's so true. I broke down fucking crying like a baby. And I just fucking told him, I was like, I was just trying to be cool. They told me to, I have no idea who you are. I was just trying to like fit in and da,
uh,
da, da. So they didn't kick my ass. I walked away tail tucked. Like I was like just totally mortified with the whole situation. Turns out that dude went down. I honestly don't even remember who it was. I'm sure if anybody was like watching would probably recall this. They ended up kicking his ass. So like the sophomore crew won that fight, right? But I'll never forget. That was such a defining moment for me where I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm done. I'm done trying to be someone I'm not.
yeah,
Like I tried like eighth grade, I was trying to be all gangster and wearing baggy Nautica. Ninth grade, I was like, maybe I'll try preppy. 10th grade, I was still trying to figure out who I was. And that moment changed everything for me where I just was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to be unapologetically Danny Marowinsky. And
yeah,
then that's when things started to change for me. And I started making friends and I started like connecting with people. And like, then all of a sudden, that's when I started becoming like popular, if you will. But it wasn't really with our grade. Like, I didn't really hang out with many kids in our grade. It was more of like the younger kids. So,
yeah.
like,
They looked up to you. I think you
it
became.
was, yeah, I mean, I could drive, like, whatever, right?
Yeah,
So, but nonetheless, I was always in trouble. So, like, Miss Rupus, if you
yeah.
remember,
I
she was
remember.
like my first coach, if you will. She kind of took me under her wing as like, she always like, catered to the problem childs. But for whatever reason, man, like, I felt accepted in her world, whereas I didn't feel that with any of the other teachers because I was just such a rebel. Like they'd be like, Danny, do this thing. I'd be like, fuck off. I remember going to the principal and like he was like, I'm not suspending you because I want you here in school. So I'm giving you in school suspension. I looked him dead in the eye. I was like, well, I'm just not going to go to that. He was like, you will, Danny. Like, I'm not going to give you what you want. You're not getting suspended. I wanted to get suspended. So
Yeah,
like I always had that kind of rebel mentality. And then when I graduated, I moved from my parents' house at like 19 down to JMU.
yeah,
And so my parents were like very much like, you know, go to college, get a job, get a wife, get a house, like traditional American dream. And I knew that I never wanted to go to college, but I convinced my parents to move out so I could go to JMU. And that's when I started snowboarding at
yeah.
Massanutten. I became an instructor, fell in love with it. And that's when my coaching career really started. I fell in love with helping out kids. I fell in
Yeah.
love with teaching people. I knew I was really interested in like freestyle snowboarding. So that's when I moved into really the snowboarding community and started my coaching career. Right. So,
So that's dope, man. I mean, that's how it is. I just for me it's like I found a weight room in ninth grade. I knew I wanted to be in the weight room and play sports and stuff, but when I was in the weight room, I was having so much fun. I think when I had the high school reunion, people were like, I remember you doing pull-ups and just being loud as shit and just doing that exact same shit I'm doing now, right? It's like I'm 38 years old, still flexing and like you got to have that kind of spirit inside you of growing up and maturing but also keeping that young spirit. I think that's real fulfillment. I think for me it's like we miss a big part of fulfillment in our personal development journey is just like grind, 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 grind. But why?
right.
Why? Why are we grinding so hard so we could just be stressed out when we're with our family or just not enjoy our hobbies. It's like, nah, like I want to enjoy my hobbies and passions. Now I'm at that stage where I could make it full time, you know. Some people are there, some people want to make the jump. I'm just like, fuck it, I'm gonna figure it out, you know, just like this title.
Yeah, and I think like that's part of like, you know, something that we share in that, right? And the idea of like just being unapologetically you and just double downing on what makes you tick, right? And that's
Yeah.
something that I try to share about. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that have a hard time with that even to this day, you know, and it's one of those things that I think I take for granted sometimes, even with myself, because I'm like, you know, doing all these things, like growing a business, getting success, the whole nine, right? And people are like, you know, how are you able to do that? How did you make the jump, right? And it's like, well, you just got to believe in yourself. And it's so easy to say those words, but
Yeah.
to get people to understand that it's kind of a challenge. And you know, I think the second part of like what we're going to talk about is like like how is coaching affecting us now and today, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like I know it's you got a bigger story on it than I because I'm not like I'm not a personal coach, you know, that's not my mantra of what I'm trying to do. But what I realized is just like in snowboarding, when I was coaching, like even like the elites in snowboarding, like I wasn't as good as, you know, the pros, otherwise I'd be a pro, right? Like I wasn't able to do all the crazy shit that they could do, but I could coach it. And as I
Hmm.
was coaching that stuff, inevitably I would also live through my coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I became better and better as a snowboarder, better as a human being. And then now, fast forward to today, like coaching, when I deal with a client, like when we're building websites or we're doing lead gen for them, it's very consultative, right? So my passion is to not just do the work and do it well, but also empower that business to adopt that and
Yeah.
have that change happen within their business to where they can grow it. So I'm coaching through that. And what I've realized is the better that I can be as a human being, the more value I can give. We kind of talked a little bit about that last week. And so that's where I realized like, okay, well, if I just coach myself through social media and me just being like, this is what Danny's doing today, and I'm going to
You're
follow through on it, then it
you're
like started to grow, right? And the business took off and it was like, so now where I'm at is like the messages that I put out there, oftentimes they're for me. And even though, you know, it's public and I know it helps some folks, but like for me, it's like, okay, I put that out there. Now I got to go live it. Right.
yeah.
So it's like by giving back, I'm also giving to myself and bringing myself up. It's a weird relationship, right?
No, man, I think you hit that spot on. I think being a good coach, and I think I wrote this down. I wanted to talk about like what makes a good coach and what makes a bad coach and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this may be a perfect lead into that is I think what makes a good coach is someone that practices what they preach, you know? I don't
Mhm.
anybody that has to do anything extraordinary or anything. I don't think I don't think I've done anything extraordinary in my head, you know, compared to who I'm comparing myself to, right? So that humbles you, but it's like I'm still getting it, right? I'm not I'm not comfortable. Like I'm not comfortable. I sleep on
Right.
the ground, one pillow, like that Tempur-Pedic pillow. Like my legs are up. I wake up and grind. I go to the gym. I eat like 4, 5 meals that are like exactly the same. My routine is pretty much like I'm in a grind, right? But that gives me like how David Goggins and Tim Grover, like when they coach, they carry conviction. Conviction is a big part of coaching. Like if your coach doesn't have conviction, I think bad coaches don't have conviction. Um, we had
Elaborate on conviction, man. Like how do you define conviction? I think that's
a
interesting.
conviction is practicing what you preach. I think it's like everybody that's a great speaker, like Tony Robbins, E.T., Tim Grover, David Goggins. They're in the grind. They're still in the grind. They haven't retired
Yeah.
from the grind or anything. So it's like once you retire from the grind, your conviction is not as strong, you know. So for me, it resonates with, and it doesn't resonate with a lot of people. Like when David Goggins says, like when he's done and he's retired and stuff, he's gonna disappear and stuff. It's like as long as he's grinding, he's carrying this conviction that actually the message carries a lot of weight. People that try to coach and try to like inspire people, and you hear that they haven't experienced thing, there's no weight to it. It just feels like flat. I've been like people that I know haven't tried that as an experience or done things that you haven't done, and when they say it to you, it's just like, come on, man. It sounds cliche.
Yeah.
It sounds
Yeah.
very cliche, and you know, sometimes like in our community, that's what I'm trying to talk about. Is like some of the shit, like it's kind of like cliche bullshit, like not like no, do the hard stuff. It's the grind that makes you who you are. You know, make you a world-class coach, you know, world-class entrepreneur, you know, high level and stuff. That's the grind. People go into the business and entrepreneurship thinking that it's gonna be easy. It's like, no, it's
No.
24/7, 365, like every day and stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, I love that, man. I mean, your spot, I think you like that was a perfect answer, right? And the perfect definition of it because like if I just even relate it back to my coaching career in snowboarding, something that separated me from a lot of the pack is I would ride with the athletes. So there was a lot of coaches that would sit at the bottom of the hill and film, and then they come down, and at the end of the day, they would review the film and be like, that's how they coached. And no discredit to them, you know, that's how they did it. Whereas I rode with the athletes. You know, I was out there falling on my face in front of them. You know, they were seeing that I was trying to become a better snowboarder while I was coaching them to become a better snowboarder. And I think that they resonated with that because it was real, right? And I think that's so true when we're talking about like even now. And if you look at like the just saturation of all the gurus out there and the
yeah,
courses
you can
and
see
all
through
the bullshit.
it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's everybody's got the same story and like, oh, you know, follow my thing. Like they're just trying to sell a course. They're not actually like living it, breathing it, doing it because so many times it's like you could just sit back on your phone and watch the money come in from doing Amazon FBA and all this other bullshit. And then like it's like buy my course, but it's like, well, if that's the case for you, then why are you doing this? Like I think they're few and far between for those like real, you know, authentic coaches. So I love that, man. And like and to your point, like going back to the Goggins and those dudes, going through it like and going off of your real experiences as you're trying to grow only makes you that much more effective because you're kind of like the A and B test bunny in a lot of regards, right? Where you're trying the stuff out first to see what works. And then
Yeah,
when it's working, you're like, hey, look,
you're the
don't
leader.
make these mistakes. I did it.
You're the leader. You could talk about it. I mean, experience, like, that's what it is. David Goggins, I think somebody asked him to pay like $80,000 for like his book. He was like, nah. He's like, fuck that. This is my experience and shit. I was like, yeah, experience is experience. You cannot uh uh outsource experience, right? Like
Yeah.
you can outsource a fake story. You tell a fake story, you're gonna get exposed. Like look at Liver King.
Yeah.
That's a fake. Well, I think he had a strategy. He's still pretty popular, but in the fitness and industry, it's like now he's a joke. So it's or like in the personal development industry or fitness industry, it's like you can't be fake for long, you know.
Yeah, man. Authenticity always like breathes through, you know, like I think, and that's what people, especially in this digital age, right? And I talk a lot about that in digital marketing. Like, how do you translate authenticity through like social media and the web and all sorts of stuff? So I totally agree with that, man. Authentic, like that's what separates the boys from the men in this field.
You have any good coaching stories or like bad coaches that you want to talk about? I was thinking about like that's a good like there's good coaches, there's some bad coaches too, you know.
So I'll like yeah, I do have a story and it's kind of a high profile one, but fuck it, it's real, so whatever.
You don't have to
I,
drop names.
I won't drop the name, but you could probably connect the dots if you really dug deep. So
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to work with Sean White's former coach. He had a camp and everything else. And I looked up to him, right? Like I looked up to him as like a mentor. Like obviously the guy's very accomplished. You know, he had the Olympic rings on his fingers. Like very like you didn't have to like question if he was the real deal, right? He was the real deal.
Yeah.
So I was working underneath of him and I was helping him out at his camps. And I wasn't trying to do this, but this just started to happen where his group of athletes started coming to me and the parents are coming to me and they're like, hey, Danny, our kids love working with you. Would you be open to coming out to Australia and coach us during the summer at Australia? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've never been to Australia. Like that's a dream of mine to be like travel out to Australia and run a camp and coach. So this was all happening during his event, right? And I got a call from him at 10 o'clock at night, and he was like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? You're stealing my fucking athletes, da da
Oh,
da da. And I'm like, no, I'm not like stealing them. They just came to me. Like I didn't ask for this. I'm not like trying to poach your program. They just came to me, right? So I ended that conversation. I was like, look, I'll tell you what. You want me to go to every single person that ever talked to me, all the parents, which was like at that point, like 10 to 15 of them. And I'm like, do you want me to go to them and just tell them like, hey, if you want to work with me, you have to go through you. And he was like, yeah, do that. I'm like, okay. So I did that the next day, and all of the parents were like, we're not under contract with him. We can
right.
work with whoever we want. We want to work with you. And I'm like, nope, sorry, can't work with me. Got to go through him if you want to work with me. Right. Those people all ended up leaving that program and they
Yeah.
didn't come back. And I lost opportunity. So then I talked with a now a world-class athlete. Actually, I can name drop him. His name's Valentino Gaselli. He's from Australia.
He sounds
Kids,
famous.
yeah, he's absolutely brilliant. He set like the one of the world records for the highest half pipe air. Like super talented kid.
Yeah.
I worked with him. I worked with his dad. Like knew that family very well. When I shared that story with his dad's like, "Why did he do that? Why didn't he just say, "Oh, cool, opportunity, Danny, why don't you go run that camp through me?" And use that as an opportunity to go do the camp and just create that camp. Like they wanted you, like just he could have pivoted that around to like
Yeah.
be his thing.
He
And
could
if
have.
anything, it was like I was supporting him, right? So I'll never forget that story because it was like so like groundbreaking to me, but it was also something that showed me that like, okay, I was actually doing something because here was this guy that I thought was like the premier of premier coaches, and he's threatened by me. And so the only reason why he's threatened by me is because I'm becoming that good, right?
Yeah.
So, but it could have been a positive outcome. So I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget that like as I go through my business journey and as I start to work with other folks, if there comes an opportunity where someone, even on my staff, gets a great opportunity, Orange Theory Fitness was one of my contracts a couple years back, and they were like, "Hey, we have a problem with attrition on coaches." So they would get coaches in. They would typically stay with Orange Theory for about 2 years or so, and then they'd go find something else, go start their own fitness thing, their own nutrition thing, whatever. And they're like, "How do we retain our coaches?" And I turned to them and I turned it back on their head, and I was like, "The trick isn't trying to retain them. The trick is empowering them. No,
Yeah.
now that you know that you have a 2 year shelf life on your coaches, instead of trying to figure out like how you can keep them sucking from the Orange Theory teat, I was like, let's be real. Who wakes up and says, I want to be an Orange Theory fitness coach for the rest of my life? Nobody. So why don't you set up a program that empowers them to
Yeah.
go do the next thing, to go become their own business, to go become their own personal trainer, and like give them that backing of that and that support. And then ultimately, those people that go off and become successful will never forget where they got their start, and they will forever be a funnel back to you for new coaches as well as clients, right? And they're
Wow.
like mind blown.
That is
So,
my. That actually
so
is really.
that's like, yeah, that's my experience with a bad coach and good coach, right?
That's really good experience because I'm thinking scaling opportunities on at Peak Performance Academy as well too, and thinking about bringing on coaches and how to kind of structure where like you're and the word I've learned this is a good word. It's an entrepreneur, right?
Yep.
Entrepreneur, hire people that are entrepreneurs within your company that take kind of part of ownership of that company and then build with an under it. And I was struggling too. I was like, am I entrepreneur or entrepreneur? When I started doing like a lot of the personal development, starting to try to learn business and stuff, to be less risky, I didn't want to leave my full-time job. I just kind of changed my mindset to be like an entrepreneur. So I was trying to help
Right.
companies grow within the inside or just learn as much as possible. I think my experience, like I just grinded. I brought like like a social media or like Aura ranking, online rankings from like 84 to like 96 in like a year. And I was like, nobody cared except for me. But that was my fucking skill. I was like, oh, I know how to get people's attention, right? So that was me, but nobody cared. But now I got to have that skill under my belt and stuff. So that's how personal development just rolls, man.
Yeah, and I think there's like that's definitely a good thought for like maybe another episode down the road of like the difference between entrepreneur and intrapreneur. And I think it's hyper relevant to so many people because there's a you hit the nail on the head. Like intrapreneur is way less risky, but there's still a big payoff. Similar to entrepreneur, but the risk is much higher and the reward could be much higher. But I think that's a we should put that down on a note for
Yeah,
something in the future.
maybe next topic. But yeah. I mean, I think
So
stories that
let's
what you share
let's
with all.
thanks, man. Yeah, no, I think this has been great. So look, we're coming up to time here. So let's wrap this up with next week. So like we talked a little bit about this, but we're doing this ad hoc again for anybody that's watching. So like this is something that we're just like figuring it the fuck out. That's why we even called it figuring it the fuck out, right?
Title, because and to be honest, like I was playing around with YouTube yesterday and I put figure the fuck out and they flagged it because I had the F-bomb on there. I was like, I don't think that's a good title if we were gonna do it on YouTube.
Well, we could be like FIFO. We could figure it out.
Yeah,
We could figure it the fuck out, right? Like
yeah.
it doesn't.
That's what we were like I was doing yesterday. I was playing around with it and I was like, And then I started thinking, I was like, okay, how I'm all like philosophical and stuff, and I was like, how about flow in, flow out?
Oh, there you go. Flow in,
Right?
flow out. I'm down for that. So look, let's do this. This like tease it up for the perfect conversation for what we're going to talk about in the next episode, which is like, what are we doing here, right? So like every podcast like always has a mission. Every podcast always has like something that they're trying to accomplish with it. And this is something that you and I just on a conversation was like, hey, maybe we should just start this. So we just started it, right? So I think we have a lot to learn about what this even is yet. So I think that could be something valuable. So maybe next episode, that's what we do. We can go through everything from like a conversation around what we name this thing and like what the actual mission is. And again, recording it live as we build it. I think that's the interesting thing for a lot of folks, right? It's like
Yeah,
we're not
uh,
communicating outside of this.
this is real life case studies. You don't have to go to the university and stuff. Like that's what Peak Performance Academy is, like live shit that you could actually use like today, not have to like go to school for like 4 years and pay a whole bunch of money and stuff. And so it's like you can watch it in your pocket or you can watch this podcast. Like the purpose is to be valuable, right? I
Right.
think like valuable is valuable. I want to bring value too. But yeah, I think this podcast and the idea of it's fantastic. I'm digging it already. This is our second episode. I love the story that you just shared. I'm gonna watch it again and I'm gonna share it with my friends and my community as well too. So be on the lookout, guys.
It's coming, man. We'll start building up the hype. Maybe next week we'll launch the first episode and then start to run it from there. But cool, man. Well, look, this is Danny and Samnang. It's been real. Looking
Yeah,
forward to our next one, and we'll figure out what we're gonna do here. You're sideways now, but that's cool.
yeah.
All right, brother. You got anything else you want to throw in there? Or?
No, I think it was a good episode. It felt great. Good energy. And do you want to talk about tomorrow's topic or
I just
we
threw it
just
out there. Yeah, like what
why?
we're doing. Yeah, why we're doing it. So,
Okay.
that's something we'll figure out. So everything from, what the name could possibly be, and then also, why continue
Yeah.
to do this. Like, what is this? What's our goal? Like, what's our mission?
Yeah, I thought about our conversation too. You talked about instead of doing like I didn't realize that's something that you taught me about marketing and like double duplicate stuff. I didn't realize that. So if you wanna I have a YouTube channel and I have the community. I was like, maybe I could put my our podcast in the community and say it's like a premium or part of the community and stuff. But we could market FIFO, however, because you're the marketing expert. I was like,
Yeah,
when you
and I think
yeah,
that's something too.
yeah,
Like even like literally like, and I'm still recording, but that's cool. But like next week's episode, like that's what we should do, or like tomorrow when we chat, like that's literally what we should do, right? Is like, what is this structure, right? Like I think if we just dive into that and just have an open conversation about the name, how we're going to share the content, where it's going
yeah,
to live, what the mission is, like that's people, like again, I think the cool thing about this that people will gravitate towards is like, oh, these guys are like documenting as they build it. you know,
Yeah.
so it's like we can follow the journey. So like let's fast forward. Like I always like to do this where it's like I do this with all my customers. So it's like you have the easy button. You can push it and you get dream outcome instantly. What is that dream outcome from this, right? And then they typically tell me what it is, and then we reverse engineer it through like digital means and things like that. So if the dream outcome is 10x your business, or the dream outcome is, you know, have a full-blown studio or this or that or the other, and like have high net worth guests come onto it, you know, whatever that dream outcome is. And it's like, okay, well, how do we do that? We reverse engineer it. That becomes the action plan from a digital strategy. And then we just start executing daily, right? We just start boom, 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 boom. This is how we're going to get there. And
Yeah.
in this case, we're documenting that journey. So what would be like for at least for me, what I'm thinking is like, imagine if this does take off, we do really well. 1 year from now, we're still rocking it. We got tens of thousands of subscribers, right? It's working.
Yeah.
You're like in now, like we've been able to bring on sponsorship dollars. We can put it into this little like area of the business, upgrade your studio, upgrade my studio, whatever. And then we could reference back to this, right? Like that's going to be so tangible. And like to your point of conviction, like so tangible and so real. Like we didn't know what we were doing. We just wanted to try it. And then like
Yeah.
if you rewind back to episode 1 and 2, which will be public and live, we could be like, look, like this is like if like, it's going to be so empowering for us to be able to be like, this is why you can do it. You just start and then you just figure it the fuck out as you go. And like we'll have the documented proof of the success, right? So
You are a good coach, bro. Well done, man. Well done. I think I'm happy about the partnership, okay?
yeah, man, me too, dude. I think this is exciting. So I just appreciate you jumping on and like, look, I like it. And I like learning more about you, you know, like it's like I said, we didn't really spend much time together in high school or anything. So like
Yeah, absolutely.
honestly, like it makes it easy to ask the questions because it's like if we were like best friends since, you know, like way back when and we knew everything to know about everybody, like we probably asked some like boring-ish questions
Yeah.
because you know, you might ask me a question that you're just honest curiosity, but it might be a pain, like the high school story of like, you know, me sharing that. Like I haven't really come out publicly telling that story ever. But it was very embarrassing for me at the
That's
time.
a good story though. No, I
Yeah.
think the vulnerability is good. Vulnerable storytelling is good. Um, I think that really captivates the audience and stuff. And people always trying to humanize me too, and I'm trying to humanize myself. Like I'm not like I'm not saying like I'm the fucking master or some shit, right? I'm just like
Yeah, that's it, man. Adding tangible results to it all. So,
yeah,
all
there
right,
you go.
brother, I gotta jump. I gotta get into 15 minutes late for my 9:30, but let's I'm good for tomorrow if you're good for tomorrow.
6 a.m. Yeah,
Cool.
yep, sounds good.
And then yeah, we'll start making it happen, dude. This has been
Okay,
good.
yep, thanks.
See you, brother.
See ya.